I said, I do not want to be taking insulin. I understand what hyperinsulinemia is. And I believe that a diet is what I need to do to get myself in shape again. She listened to absolutely nothing I said. And all of a sudden, the next time I saw him, he said, I watched that video. And hmm, I got to tell you something. This is him talking to me. We can't discuss nutrition with you. Look at this myth. Despite popular belief, diabetes is not caused by eating too much sugar. Say what?
Brian, how did you find Carnivore?
Well, back in September of 2018, I got a phone call we have a clinic that our doctor resides at, and a nurse asked me to come in and see her. And it was about basically a full exam that I got, including blood work. So I went and saw her, sat down, and she proceeded to tell me that I was a little diabetic, okay, and that I had something called CML. And CML is an elevated white blood cell count. So it's a form of cancer, but it's not the real bad leukemia type. Um, anyway, I've been fixing things all my life, so I've got these two things that I've got to figure out and whatever. It was no big deal. I don't care. So the first thing that happened was I ended up going to a cancer center local here, and they got me figured out for the CML. I take a pill like I just said to you, a imatinib, and it basically in 1 month, 3 months, pardon me, it got my blood cell count to where yours is right now, probably if you don't have the same pollinator. So then it was dealing with diabetes. And I know about diabetes. I don't know very much about it. My wife's got a friend that's a type 1. I know the difference between type 1 and type 2. So I happen to be working I own a telescope company. I sell astronomical equipment, but an old boss of mine wanted me to come back and help him with his shop. And I was at the shop at that time working. And I basically, at the beginning of 2019, I started to not feel great. And the funny thing is I ended up at the hospital once. My blood sugar was at 25. Uh, that is 25 times 18 if you don't use the same units we use in Canada. But I didn't feel any different than I felt when I was good. It's kind of strange. And the CML really, I don't know if it affected me or not. But basically, I ended up going to the hospital. I had not seen an endocrinologist at this time. So it was basically, by this time, I was at home because I was very tired for some reason. And I ended up off work. While I was off work, I decided I would look into this stuff. So I spent a lot of time on YouTube and just typing in type 2 diabetes, you get the likes of uh, a lot of doctors, okay? Many, including yourself. I know you're not a doctor, but I've been listening to you guys for years now. So what I found out was the first thing, very important YouTube video I watched, which was actually a TED Talk by Dr. Sarah Hallberg. And she proceeded to tell people that type 2 diabetes is not a chronic disease you will have for all of your life. It is something that's reversible, et cetera, et cetera. And I will preface that, even though I've already said it, with something to the effect of when I found out I was type 2 diabetic and I learned about food, the food that we eat, one of the first things that crossed my mind is what the heck were we eating 50,000 or 100 or 1,000 or 200,000 years ago? It wasn't what we're eating now. But I can say I'm pretty sure the meat was pretty much the same as it is now. The vegetables, the fruit that we've processed into something that's morphed into something quite different did not exist back then. So it was not like, on a Sunday morning, the caveman family got up and went out to Walmart to get groceries and bought, avocados and watermelon if they were living in what's now southern France in January. Okay, that didn't happen. So we didn't evolve eating that stuff. we evolved eating something else, and the primary source was meat. And I also found out, we might not have been the best at hunting, so sometimes we had the leftovers, and what that would be is cracking the skulls open of animals that were killed by other animals that couldn't get at the brain and eating that. So basically, it kind of jived with what I was thinking in the first place. By this time, I had started to see a new doctor because uh, my doctor had retired. Now, just going back before 2018, September of 2018, the doctor that I had been complaining to him for 3 years about my left eye. I said I sell astronomical equipment. I sell binoculars too. And what the deal was is when I looked through binoculars, my left eye was kind of cloudy. And I mentioned this to him for years. And it was finally 3 years later, my optometrist sent him an email and said, this guy's got something going on. And it's like diabetic retinopathy. That's when he pulled me into the office and did this big exam and the blood tests and all this stuff. So uh, I was probably pre-diabetic or diabetic 3 years before. And it is the lackadaisical outlook on diabetes, and I think this is prevalent across the world, that this is treated when it could have been done a long time. We could have started on this a long time ago. So basically, I'm in the office talking to the doctor first time, and I got deferred to these two nutritionists, and they sat me down. And at this point in time, I was just getting into the YouTube videos, just getting into aligning myself with what a lot of doctors and YouTube people were talking about with their type 2 diabetes and what was going on. You're finding out people that were taking insulin for 20 years went on just a low carb diet. And inside 6 months, they weren't taking any drugs anymore. That's amazing, but it makes sense. So these two nutritionists, while I met them a couple of times, I had a lot more understanding of what hyperinsulinemia was, and apparently they don't. So I was a little resistant. Well, I was not a little resistant. I was very resistant to what they were telling me. Uh, I will show you this. I pulled this out. You've seen these before. This is the um, food guide in Canada. This thing. That's what they threw in front of me, and I'm looking at this, and I'm saying just in my head at the time, this doesn't look right. so so basically, I went home. I watched many more videos. One of the first things I did do is I quit sugar immediately, milk, like 2% milk, that kind of stuff immediately. Anything that was sugar. I was never a big dessert eater, but I would get a little carried away with toffee, fay, and chocolates every once in a while. So there was that had to be dealt with. Um, so basically, I'm at a point now. I haven't seen an endocrinologist. I've spent some time with a nutritionist. I've spent some time with a doctor, my doctor, and I then got involved with Dr. Jason Fung because his the Toronto Metabolic Clinic is an hour and a half from me. So I ended up being one of the people that was in that situation too. So I'd go down and meet a doctor, and we'd go over nutrition, and you'd start talking about it the correct way and stuff like that. So they basically started monitoring what I was doing as well. At the same time, I had been given insulin, and they wanted me to take this insulin at about 8 o'clock at night, and they gave me the meter too. So I have a meter, and they said, before you take this insulin, I want you to check your blood sugar, and if it's around 7, be very careful with what you're doing because you're going to bed pretty soon. You overdose in insulin, you're going into a coma. Not a good time to be doing that. So I took insulin 6 times. That was it at night, and my blood sugar when I did it was just a little bit over 7. And by the time I got through that first week, I had my first meeting with an endocrinologist, and I was really looking forward to this meeting. So I went in and I told you in a nutshell, much more concise, what I just told I told her what I just told you. Anyway, I said, I do not want to be taking insulin. I understand what hyperinsulinemia is. And I believe that a diet is what I need to do to get myself in shape again. She listened to absolutely nothing I said. She wanted to monitor me, so she just told me to keep doing the insulin stuff. So I said, fine. I, I come home and I had a meeting with my nutritionist. And I told them I had my meeting with the endocrinologist. They said, well, here's what I would really like you to do. I want you to, in the morning, I want you to have some oatmeal. Okay. And I said, so you want me to eat carbohydrates to raise my blood sugar so I can take insulin and lower it? Is this correct? And they don't agree to that way of thinking, but that's exactly what you're doing. And I said, well, wouldn't it just be better for me not to to eat any carbohydrates? No, we want you to do this. So I agreed to do it for 3 days. So for 3 days, my insulin spiked in the morning because I took carbohydrates, and plus the dawn effect. Not the greatest time for doing this kind of stuff. So the other thing that I've been given is metformin. So I take 1,000 milligrams twice a day. There was another component to it that's been removed since that I don't take, but so I've been on that pretty much all the time. So, anyways, uh, I go through their little hoops and all this stuff. Come back a few days later, and they're looking at my results and stuff, and I ended up saying to them, diet is the way to deal with this. And what you're telling me to eat is not the way to do it. And taking insulin, as far as I was concerned at that point, knowing what I know about hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia, I would rather have high blood sugar than high insulin. And this leads into another little thing I found out. And it's amazing how many things I had to tell my doctor, but um, there's a test for telling what your fasting insulin is. You might know it. It's called a C-peptide test. Okay. So I suggested to my doctor that I get one of these things. And he said, I don't know what a C-peptide test is. So I, uh, I said, well, I really want to do that. And I also want to get a CAC scan, a coronary artery calcium scan. He didn't know what that was either. Now, I'm not blaming them. They're not taught. And I confronted him a couple of times. As a matter of fact, I gave him a list of YouTube people to listen to, the ones I was listening to, like Ken Berry, Jason Fogg, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden, the next time I saw him, he said, I watched that video. And I got to tell you something. This is him talking to me. We can't discuss nutrition with you. That is something that we could have our medical license removed. So I can't deal with that. And so he and I got along pretty well. He understood. Anyway, so by this time, I'm into halfway through 2019. I'm on a low carb diet. I have stopped taking insulin. I took it 6 times. And I took all the insulin back up to my pharmacy and told them to destroy it or whatever you want to do. Kept on with the metformin and proceeded along. Basically, what I was doing at this point in time is espousing to the people that would listen to me why they shouldn't be eating carbohydrates. You probably know how many listen to you in your own family. If you tell them this stuff, it goes, they never listen. They're always too young and won't bother them until much later. Until they find out much later comes much quicker than they think. Because I don't know about you, I'm 66, and time seems to be going a little faster now than it was, when I was 40 years ago or 20 years ago. Anyway, so long story short is I've been going through all this stuff, and now we enter into 2020. By this time, I had gone back to the endocrinologist. She not only told me to keep taking the slow-acting insulin that I was taking, that she wanted me to take, and I told her I'm not taking. Well, I told her this after. She wanted me to take insulin 4 more times a day with a different type of insulin. And I'm asking, yeah, do you listen to me at all? Like, are you up on anything? Do you know what we're talking about? Anyway, so I divorced that whole situation with her. I didn't see her again. But we're coming into 2020. Now, what happens in 2020? We get into COVID, right? Now, I'm supposedly metabolically in jeopardy because I've got type 2 diabetes. So by this time, I found out good thing to be taking a lot of is vitamin D3. We're in Canada, it's winter, and we don't get the sun. So I started taking 10,000 units of vitamin D3 every day. And I only became COVID positive once. I never even had any symptoms, but it was years after. But what I'm getting into has nothing to do with the carnivore diet. It has to do with the other complication, and that is taking the COVID vaccine. I have nothing against vaccines whatsoever. I was vaccinated for smallpox or whatever, polio in Canada. I never had any adverse effect from it. It's not a problem. So I got 2 Pfizer shots. That's what we got in Canada, 2 Pfizer shots. And then in 2022, I got my booster shot. It was December 24th. I had to drive about an hour and a half away to get this thing. And it was supposed to be a Pfizer shot. It wasn't a Pfizer shot. I get there, they said, well, you're going to get a Moderna shot. Okay, I don't care. So they give me the Moderna shot. Now, something happened after the Moderna shot that never happened after the Pfizer shots. And what that was is, number one, my arm hurt like it never hurt with the Pfizer shots. I'm a mechanic. I walk into things, bang yourself. We don't pay much attention to it. This was kind of painful. But the other thing that happened, for about a week after, it was very short after I got the shot, all of my teeth ached, every single one. It wasn't like a toothache. They just ached. And it just went away. Okay, not much we can do about this stuff. But later in the year, I started having what my doctor thought was a gout attack. I've only had a couple of gout attacks in my past. I know what it feels like. What I was going through was not gout. It just wasn't. But I ended up at the hospital. They put me on IV antibiotics, thinking it was something cellulitis. They thought it was that. They were blaming uric acid and all this. By this time, I know about uric acid too. And I explained to my doctors, that you can have high uric acid and never have a gout attack. And you can have low uric acid and have gout attacks all the time. You know that, right? And if you listen to Ken Berry, he will tell you, yeah, I agree with him. If they extract the synovial fluid from one of your joints, you'll find all kinds of uric acid in there. So there's something else that's triggering it. Anyway, this happened to me 4 times. It took 3 weeks to recover 4 times in that year. And I can't walk. So I'm laid up. I can't come to my store. And I'm still going through my CML stuff, going to the cancer clinic with that, doing all the stuff with Dr. Fung. I'm doing all this stuff with the interruption of not being able to walk for 3 times. So I ended up I got referred to a rheumatologist. So what's the rheumatologist start telling me? It's uric acid. Well, guess what? You're rheumatoid arthritis man. I happen to know who David Perlmutter is, and he wrote a book on uric acid, and I bought a uric acid meter. So I pulled my uric acid meter out and I showed him my uric acid. I said, here it's low and I'm complaining. Here it's high and I'm not complaining. He wanted to put me on allopurinol for gout. Okay. I said to all these doctors, I do not want to treat symptoms. I want to fix the cause of the problem. I ended up being referred to internal medicine at the same hospital. I'd go to the cancer clinic, and they did all kinds of tests. They took like 14 or 16 vials of blood from me. They had me ultrasounded. They looked for all kinds of stuff. No problem. I'm still dealing with the type 2 diabetes. I'm still modifying my diet. But another complication was my wife had a stroke in 2022. And we didn't know about it for a day. I ended up coming down early one morning she goes to work and she's standing in the bathroom looking at the mirror, and the whole right side of her face is dropped. And I said, what the hell's going on here? So I said, get out of here. I ended up giving her an aspirin. I said, chew this right now, swallow it with some water. I took her to the hospital because I figured it's going to be quicker than an ambulance. I really had no idea. So took her to the wrong hospital. The hospital you take her to for uh, uh, heart attacks is different than the one you take her to for stroke. So they ended up putting her in an ambulance at the one I took her to and took her over to the right one. She ended up in the hospital for a week, which is lucky. Now, the good thing is she's pretty much totally recovered, and it was fairly quick. But when she's in the hospital, they did blood work on her. Guess where her blood work? That was her. Guess what her instantaneous blood glucose level was? 6.4. She's in the hospital. They're feeding her pudding, uh, little little packages of fruit, cereal with skim milk, okay, bran muffins. I called the doctor and I said, look, she's pre-diabetic. And the doctor said, no, she's not. I said, 6.4, she's pre-diabetic. If you wouldn't, I would call her just diabetic. This is something that's not right. And I don't want her to be eating this diet. So can we put her on a diabetic diet? Well, guess what the diabetic diet is? It's the same thing. So nothing changed. So now I've got to contend with her. They put her on statins, which I don't really think is the greatest thing for everybody to be on, especially for what was going on with her. But so now she's on statins. They've got her left carotid was completely plugged, either that or the right one, and the other one's 30% plugged. You can do nothing about 100% plugged carotid artery. They won't do anything with the right side until it gets to be a minimum of 70% plugged. And what caused that? Well, I've been trying to get her to quit smoking for years. Her doctor told her the cause of this has been going on a long time ago, or for a long time. The cause of this is smoking. Guess what got her to stop smoking? Not me. That finally got her to stop. So we got that out of the way. Now we've got two people that are diabetic, type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic, that we've got to deal with. I have a little bit more willpower when it comes to changing food, but I will tell you this. If you handed me for dessert another steak, I would eat it before chocolate cake. I've always been like that. So meat, I eat meat. It's not an issue. But with my wife, she's a little bit more into the sugary bread stuff and such. So anyways, she's a little bit more difficult to tame, as it were. But she had already started eating some of the things that I was eating and cutting them out. And anyways, it was going along pretty well. So she progressed very, very well after having her stroke. Like, she doesn't walk funny. She doesn't talk funny. She says she's lost a bit of her memory and stuff like this, but I really haven't noticed a whole lot. So now we're both doing this. And I said, I think it's time to get into the carnivore stuff. So that's when we began to the more of the meat eating. Now, this is another thing that you have to kind of drag people into, because not everybody's going to just drop everything and say, yeah, I'll just eat steak. And then, of course, there's all this nonsensical stuff where it's going to cost you way more to eat and all this kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what, we're already also with Jason Fung. I'd already been intermittent fasting. So I don't eat for like 16 hours. So I've been intermittent fasting. My wife doesn't eat that much, but we basically have our big meal at about 6 o'clock. And that's it. We don't snack. I was never a popcorn person or anything like that. Anyway, she is. We get into 2024. Now, I have not had one of those goutish attack things since the year before, since November before. I haven't had one since. My uric acid earlier this year was at 10, and I checked it a couple of days ago. It's down to 6. Now, I do still have my alt is still high, so my liver enzymes are still high. I do still have a fatty liver. That is something that's pretty hard for me to get rid of. But I did lose 40 pounds when I got onto the low carb diet, right up pretty much in months. And the funny thing is, I plateaued. When I started eating just meat, I lost another 5 pounds in a week. It was just like that. And I weighed at that time 280. I went down to 240, and now I'm down to about 230. And I've basically, I don't remember ever weighing much less than 230 ever in my life. Now, I know I did, but just don't remember. So I've kind of plateaued where I don't care about my weight anyways. Um, so it was never a thing where I got into it for weight. I, number one, like meat better. I don't know if you've ever had pigtails before, but I live in an area of Waterloo County, and we've got a lot of German folk here, so pork hocks and pigtails and stuff like that. Love the stuff, always have. So meat in this area, not a big deal for me to have, get a hold of. And my snacks now are something like I get a hog jowl, I'll cut it up into thin slices, fry it, and when it's done, I throw it in the fridge. And there's my, it's not beef jerky, it's just basically real thick bacon. And I chew away at that stuff when I want something. But uh, the only meals I have is basically at about 11 o'clock. I will have something very small, like a piece of lunch meat or something. And that's when I take my pills. And then when it comes to be 6 o'clock, that's when we've made food. And we always make our own food. I've never been I never understood pizza. That was never something that I was cared about. Very rarely had it. And all the packaged food in the store, I just never did it. So how I got to be where I was back in like 2016, 17, etc., I'm not exactly sure, other than you don't go buy a box of toffee and eat the whole thing in 15 minutes. And I would do that. And I didn't do it all the time, but I would. However, I think the key to it was one of my favorite meals. Have you ever seen Seinfeld and his penchant for cereal? Do you ever watch them? Well, I would come home, I had a huge bowl. I would pour cornflakes and Special K and grape nuts and all kinds of cereal we have over here in that bowl. And I would have this huge bowl of cereal. And I always use homogenized milk, so it's not. I would never drink skim milk, so it was never low fat. But that's what I would eat, and I did it often. And I thought, you know, I'm going to go grab a whole bunch of vegetables because I hear these things are so good for you and all this stuff. So I would steam. I wouldn't do anything else. I would just steam onions, carrots, potatoes, turnips, broccoli, cauliflower, all this stuff, and I'd have this huge bowl of vegetables. I'm pretty sure that that's what caused me, not the vegetables so much, but the cereal. So I've never been a fan of eating too many vegetables anyways. I always thought meat was the right thing to do. So for me to ditch vegetables all right away, like completely out of my diet, not an issue. But I do have my wife to deal with, and we do eat cabbage. We've made crack slaw and stuff like that. Um, so we've kind of morphed ourselves out of the low carb and leaning into the more carnivore type diet. And um, it's a real disservice to people. I want to show you one other thing that I pulled out here for you. This is from the Canadian Diabetes Association. I will let you look at this. Okay. Look at this myth. Despite popular belief, diabetes is not caused by eating too much sugar. Say what? I wanted to do a class action suit against these people. This is on their website. And there is one thing they say correct. And I don't know who else has ever said this. I thought of it quite a while ago, and I've just never seen anybody. When you talk about genetics, of course there's genetics involved. But here's how I can explain people in a family setting where somebody's predisposed to become type 2 diabetic. What's the other thing that's common between that family? And all you have to show people is a photograph of a dining table, they're all eating the same stuff. Okay. And if the same stuff that you're eating is the stuff that's, if you're predisposed to becoming type 2 diabetic, well, your family's feeding to it. There's the genetic aspect I see. I don't really favor the one where, my father, I've got his genes and he's predisposed for it, so I am. That's not it. It's the family. You're sitting there eating all this stuff. And some people can do it. They can do it all their life and never have a problem. But a lot of us can't. So in a nutshell, your doctor doesn't know what a C-peptide test is. I finally got him to get me a C-peptide test, but it wasn't him. His wife, they had a baby, and two other doctors stood in for him. And I finally got the second one that stood in for him to look this thing up. So she got me the C-peptide test. I wasn't watching her. It wasn't a C-peptide test. It was a C-telepeptide test. C-telepeptide test has to do with your bones. So I went and paid $80 to get the C-telepeptide test because I didn't know. Maybe they call it, the doctors in their Latin linguity. I didn't know whether this was correct or not. So basically, I ended up going back, and guess what I found out? A C-peptide test is now covered under our health insurance in Canada. So it's free. I've tried to get my wife to go get one. She doesn't do it. I don't know what to do about that. But when I got my C-peptide test, my fasting insulin is high. Not really high, but it's high. And if you don't know this, it's a problem. So to explain to people listening how admired your family doctors are and how little they know, and I can't blame them, because if they're not going to be taught nutrition when they're going through their schooling, then how can they know this stuff? They're given a list of things to treat people with, to treat symptoms, not necessarily to fix causes. But I said to my doctor, would it not be a good idea to, when you have your kids are 20 years old or whatever, have them, you're doing HbA1c, why not do a C-peptide test and have that recorded? Well, we don't really do that. Well, I know you don't really do it, but wouldn't it be a good idea to have an idea when this person was 22 years old, they had a proper fasting insulin level. Now they're 50 and it's way off, right? So between that, and I don't pay much attention to LDL cholesterol, it's HDL to triglyceride ratio, I think is far more important. I've explained that to my doctor too, who I gave him an update on lipid hypothesis that he hadn't seen. So I don't want to I don't want to come across as my doctor doesn't know anything, because he does. He's a very, very good guy. But they don't have time to sit around watching YouTube videos for all these doctors for months like I did. Okay. They just don't have time, and they got all kinds of patients with all kinds of different things that they got to figure out. So I understand. And they're also bound by the governing body that says this is what you're supposed to do with people, and if you don't do it, you'll lose your license. Well, I don't want them to lose their license. So I have some leniency with that, and I try as hard as I can to educate doctors when I'm talking to them. Not that I know more than them, but that there are other doctors just like them that are treating people. And guess what? Guess what? One of the best ways of treating people, not just for type 2 diabetes, but for pretty much everything, is a carnivore diet. And why would that be? Because we evolved eating meat, Pete's sake. How can you not get this into your head? We weren't eating cucumbers like the cucumbers we have 50,000 years ago. And the grand portion of our evolution did not happen since we became idiots and fat, and due to commercialism at the beginning of the 1900s and everything, because commercialism took over. You got people manufacturing food nowadays. What is that? It just doesn't make sense. And people bought into this nonsense, and all the commercials. It's just ridiculous. I explained to you I couldn't do this earlier because my wife and I were going on a trip, and we went down to the Henry Ford, which is a museum in Detroit, Michigan. It's the Henry Ford Model T, all this stuff. Huge, huge museum, and Greenfield Village. And so we go to this thing, and in the morning before you get up to go out and do your museuming stuff, we're watching TV. And what's on TV? Endless commercials for this pill, that pill, this for doing this, and nothing else. Like, these people are literally brainwashed into thinking you got this problem, now there's a pill to take and it's going to fix it. And they don't pay attention to what they should be looking at, which is what they're eating. Two things that drive me a little bit nuts. One of them has to do with photography, and the other has to do with doctors. One of them is in photography. You'll hear photographers saying, it's all about the light. Well, no kidding. You don't have light. What are you exposing film to or a camera sensor? You're going to see nothing, right? That's obvious. So why do you say it? But the other thing is, and I know that there's a little resistance to this, but you are what you eat. Well, I really don't know what else you could be, because you breathe air, you drink water, and you eat food. Was some miracle thing making you turn into something else outside of that? If it is, I'd like to know what that process is. I don't think we're subject to photosynthesis and stuff like this. So how does this work? Now, I know, of course, the vitamin D3 and the sun and all this stuff, but how do you look at that? How do you look at the Inuit having virtually no heart problems and stuff like this? Having a person live with them and turn over eating a carnivore diet and coming back medically far enhanced than they were when they started, okay? And just say, well, it's bad for you. It doesn't make the slightest bit of sense. Does it to you? I didn't think so. So anyways, at the point, this is more a discourse on how you as a patient have to weed out what people are telling you. And Albert Einstein said common sense is just the prejudices you accumulate before you're 18 years old. Well, that to a point is correct. And you might not realize what kind of a bearing that has on it. Because when you're told things very young, like for instance, if you are a bigot, bigotry is not something you walk around and you start disliking people because of the color of their skin. Somebody taught you that. That is where it comes from. Hands down, there's no other explanation for it. Well, if people are telling you that sugar is good for you and salt is bad, and you're having heart problems, and telling you to stop eating salt, but not the sugar, how does that work? So we're in a state with carnivore being slammed, people telling you it's no good. I watched a video, part of a video of you being cut apart by some vegan guy there that's going to tell you that you're a liar. You probably don't know what I'm talking about. It's just, I'm listening to this guy for 5 minutes. He's a smug little brat who thinks if he eats radishes, he's going to be healthy, and you eating a pork chop, you're going to die. I don't understand these people. It's just ridiculous. So as far as the carnivore diet, to me, this is really a no-brainer. I couldn't care less what doctors say as a pejorative. I will look at data and evidence, and I'll tell you right now, people, the evidence of what sugar is doing to you rather than salt, the evidence of what meat does to you, especially red meat does to you, instead of plant protein, well, you want to redo your thinking. And you pretty much, I believe, when you do that and you start eating a lot more meat and ditch the vegetables and the fruit juice and all that stuff, you're going to feel a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. So with your situation, are you still on metformin?
I am, but what I've been discussing with my doctor is, okay. So I've got fatty liver disease. My alt is still high. Now, when I had the problem with the goutish type thing, I wasn't taking allopurinol. What it was suggested was that I take Tylenol. And the problem with taking a lot of Tylenol is it can raise your alt. So your fatty liver doesn't disappear. You've got to clear this stuff. So recently, after finding out that it's still high, um, because of my last trip to the cancer clinic for my CML, um, I'm looking. We've got all of our lab results. They're online. We can just look at them anytime. So I've got access to all that stuff, and the alt was high. It was the only thing that was high in everything, other than, well, they didn't do blood glucose. So, anyways, I started looking into the fatty liver again and found out that what is it called? Milk thistle is something that people have been taking for this and a variety of other things. So one thing I did is I do not take Tylenol anymore. And I had been taking it up to about a few months ago, even though I didn't really have a big episode. The problem was I could feel it kind of coming on. And what my doctor said is, when you feel that, take some Tylenol, do it as quickly as you can. So I did that. And it was just a few weeks ago that I really stopped doing that and started taking the milk thistle. So right now, I'm trying to get my alt levels down, my liver in better shape, and clear this fatty liver up. Um, but I think the CML, I don't know other people that have CML at the same time of being a type 2 diabetic. So I don't know how the CML affects this as well. So it's a little more complicated, maybe, maybe not. So the idea of me taking metformin for long, I don't want to. My doctor said, we can try taking you off and see where things go. And I said, we'll do that. Let me see if I can get my alt down to where it's supposed to be, and then we'll start pulling that off and see where we go.
How is your wife doing?
She's doing fine. She's she still complains about saying she has her memories a little lapsed, and maybe she's a little bit slower, but not really very perceptibly. As far as her walking, here's how we found out. This is the weird thing. She was out working out front of the house doing yard work in August when this happened on a Sunday. And Monday is when I took her to the hospital because when she came in, she showed no signs of having had a stroke. Nothing. She came in, she laid down for a bit, had a little snooze for 15 minutes or whatever. Then she went and had a shower. I made dinner. We ate. She wanted to have, you know what Dairy Queen is? She wanted ice cream. So we went and had ice cream, came back. And then the next morning, I find this out. Well, while we're in the hospital, we happened to have a Ring camera. And I wasn't really thinking where she even was. But we looked through the footage of the Ring camera. And right in front of our house, you can see her starting to have the stroke. She's walking funny. She almost fell in a flower bed. But there was nothing wrong with her when she came in the house. So I had no clue until the next morning, which is really, really strange. But the long and the short of it is, when we got in there, she was really talking. If you've ever talked to a person that's had a heart attack or a stroke, you can tell there's something seriously wrong. And plus, her face drooping was an indication as well. But uh, she got out of the hospital in 1 week. She's been eating more of a low carb diet. I was taking bacon into her when she was in the hospital. So we had the pre-cooked bacon, and I'd take some in, and she's munching away on that. Luckily, she didn't eat a lot of the stuff that they gave her. But um, the things that we did do, we really started talking about getting off of the statins. I explained to her that I don't. She knew what a thalidomide baby was, and I explained to her that the person that invented thalidomide came up with the first statin. And guess what happened in both cases? A lot of people died. And statins, again, if you think your LDL cholesterol's in is a problem, get your doctor. I think it's called a nuclear magnetic resonance scan blood test, and find out what your LDL particle size is and count. And if they're all big buoyant ones, you're fine. If you got a lot of small ones, that can lead to plaque buildup. But until they can tell you that, I forget it. There's a doctor. He's not a doctor. Sorry. There's a guy that I'd never heard of before, and he's worked for an insurance company. Maybe you heard of him, but he did statistics. It was his job to find out or to predict within a month when somebody's going to die. How many months does this person have to live? And he was very good at it because of all the data he had. And he said one poignant thing. He said, with all the centenarians that he dealt with, to a T, everyone. So people that are 100 years plus that have passed away. You know what their LDL cholesterol was? Well over 240. Every one of them. And if you walked into your doctor's office and said, he found out your LDL cholesterol was 240, he'd be ringing bells and putting you on statins. My
You
doctor
need a
actually asked me,
statin, yeah.
yeah, and my doctor said, this is my doctor. He knows me by now. He said, you know, Brian, your LDL cholesterol is a little high. I'm going to recommend a statin to you, but you're not going to want it, are you? And I said, yeah, I'm not going to take a statin. That's ridiculous. So anyway, she's doing fine. Um, uh, we are trying to get the coronary artery calcium scans done. Uh, there are some places where you pay $100 and you like 100 US and you can get it done. In Canada, I don't know where there actually is a place to do it. There is a town called London pretty close to us, and I'm pretty sure they can do it. But getting our doctor to sign on to all this stuff, it's just he doesn't know what it is. When I told him about the C-peptide test, he said, well, I can get it for you, but I can't read the results. And I said, well, I will. I have no problem looking at it. I've got enough information. I might not know to the nth degree, but I can make a good guess, you know. And I haven't seen him since I got the results. So I will have to have a chat with him and see what he says with that. But until my wife does the C-peptide test, we don't know where she is. But she is a little bit high on the blood glucose right now, but doesn't take she doesn't take metformin, sorry, or insulin.
No, so based on your experience, if someone came to you and said, how do I get started with carnivore? What would your advice be to them?
Okay, so because I have always been a pretty big meat eater, it's not something, this is a very subjective thing, so it's not a big stretch for me, especially not being a big vegetable eater. It's not a big deal for me to do. But what I would suggest is if you want to have some vegetables, I cannot believe how many ways you can get just a plain old cabbage and make it very good. And its effect on you is not bad. And start out with that. So eggs are one of the biggies. Most people don't separate your yolk from the white. Okay, if you're gonna throw anything away, throw the white out, not the yolk, but eat the whole thing. Eggs are not going to hurt you. That is one thing you can get into. Bacon, not going to hurt you. Eat bacon. And I don't know too many people that don't like it. There might be some. I think the key thing with the carnivore thing is if a human being is hurting an animal and I'm around, that human being's in trouble. I am much more reactive to people hurting animals than I am people hurting people. So I totally understand the idea. The weird thing is we go to the grocery store and we look at our beef roast and all this stuff. Nobody wants to go and kill a cow. Okay, it's not. If I were the one that invented this world, I wouldn't have life on this world eating each other. I would have made another plant. I would have made another source of food that would work for everybody, and everybody wouldn't be eating each other. But that's not the way we evolved. So it is something that has to be done for us to survive. We can't switch over to eating all vegetables. It is proven over and over again that it is unhealthy. We are not meant to process the plant proteins the way we do meat. We didn't evolve with it. It's as simple as that. So I would just start slow. I love coffee. We only use 35% cream. That's all we use. Do not buy anything that is low fat, fat removed, or anything like that. Throw the margin away. Don't use any of the seed oils. Only use avocado oil, probably olive oil is even better. We use ghee, butter, cook with butter. these are all really good tasting things, and get your palate over into that, and you can do it relatively slowly. Maybe get into some barbecuing without a whole lot of sauce and stuff like that. But I never had a stomach problem by eating pretty much anything. I can eat pretty much anything. It's not the stomach problem I was worried about. It's what caused me to end up having so much sugar floating around in my bloodstream. So uh, I think what you can do is if you're a cold turkey type person, you could do it. There's not a problem with it. But look, don't fall into the thing where we get into the keto type diet, and there's nothing wrong with keto, but don't start making those keto snacks. Don't be making the fat bombs and the nonsense, because what you're doing is you're convincing yourself that you can still eat that stuff at the same time. And I don't think that's a good idea. Okay. Your brain, I quit smoking in 1995. I did it cold turkey. And your brain is doing everything it can to say to you, get one of them things in your mouth and light it up again. I want that. And you just say, I understand what you're trying to do, but you can piss off. I'm not doing it. Forget it. You got to do that for everything. When I stopped putting sugar in my coffee, I really didn't like, I won't drink black coffee. So it's something that you have to ease into. But uh, I'll tell you this, when you quit smoking with me, in about 2 weeks, you really start to feel a lot better. And here's your brain. You know what your brain is going to do? It's going to say, hey, you've been smoking for how many years? I wasn't that many years, but you've been smoking, and you quit smoking, and inside of 2 weeks, you feel way better. You know what that means, Brian? You can start smoking again. You don't do that. You don't fall into that trap. And if it's sugar or whatever, you've simply got to resist, the chocolate bars and the keto snacks and all this stuff. That's why I told you earlier, you could do this with bacon, but a hog jowl is not a piece of bacon. It's just another piece of meat, and it's relatively inexpensive. If you cut it up into thick pieces and fry it, it is a great snack. And you know what? The problem with it is you could eat the whole pig jowl as a snack and not feel it. My stomach, when I eat beef, it is as rare as I can get it. The rarer the meat is, the better I feel. I can eat a 34-ounce steak that's rare and really not feel overly full. I don't do that anymore though. Okay. But I could do that. Um, Eating overcooked food, no, I should say like a beef roast or whatever. That's not good. Your stomach will digest. Remember, again, if we go back 100,000 or whatever years, how much of their food was barbecued or even cooked over a fire? I don't know if we know that, but it's pretty much raw. And so we evolved eating that kind of stuff all the time. And then I, this is kind of weird. Get somebody anywhere in the world. You've heard of Love Boat, right? The show Love Boat. Okay, get them to turn it on and take a look now. Those people are this thick. Okay, early '80s. They're that thick. There's a few overweight people, and then you look at it now. If they made Love Boat now, they'd have to make the ship bigger with the same number of people on it because it would sink into the water more. It's a testament to what we've been conned into thinking, that sugar is good for you, salt is bad, red meat is no good, eggs is no good, butter's no good. Of course, we evolved with it. We've been eating it for a long time. All of a sudden, it's bad. Yeah. Okay.
So, Brian, if people want to reach out to you, do you have any way to get in contact, any social media or anything?
Um, the best way to get in touch with me, I am, because I do have I deal in astronomy. I'm trying to get a YouTube video, our channel going, and it's basically interviewing. I will have that available. Other than that, it's just email. And if somebody wants to email me, it's Dernish at live.ca. That's the email I gave you. They can email me there. Absolutely no problem.
Cool. So I'll put links in the description for you. Thank you so much for coming on, Brian. And I really appreciate you sharing the insights and also putting the Love Boat theme tune in my head for the rest of the day.
Well,
Um, thank you
think of
so
Fantasy
much.
Island then. The same thing.